Cenk, let me go to you. I saw a euphoric post on X from you earlier, absolutely ecstatic that Kamala Harris had gone for Tim Walz.
Piers, you've never been more wrong, and that's a tough thing.
Which Kamala are we going to get? Josh Shapiro would have been more her leaning into the establishment side. No, she's going all the way left. We'll see how that plays in Peoria.
This is America's football coach versus America's weirdo, who apparently might have a couch fetish and is absolutely hated by his own base.
She came out and said everybody needs to be woke. That is not going to play well. If she speaks, as I think eventually she's going to have to do, we're going to see whether Cenk or I are right, and the spoiler alert is, I am.
Protect women, keep men out of women's sports. I don't know. You guys are nuts. I don't know what to tell you. This is a very black and white situation. Then again, I know you guys don't really know what a woman is.
Because you've been lying about it the whole time, Piers. There's no test. They totally made it up. Because they were worried
So why
that she was
didn't
going
they
to beat a
appeal?
Russian box. Let me just
goddamn
it answer the question. Can I just answer the goddamn question? So in high school, you're trying to find 7 people that you think is a problem. Oh, okay, apparently I can't answer the goddamn question.
17 days ago, Kamala Harris became the presumptive Democratic nominee for president. She's yet to give a serious interview or face a press conference, and many people are getting rightly upset about that. But why should she bother? The media machine has roared into full throttle support of their great new hope, and so far, that's working. The latest polls show the vice president has quickly closed the gap on Donald Trump. In many cases, she's actually leading. But that could all be about to change. Today, the Harris campaign made what looks to be what could be his first major mistake. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is her pick for VP running mate, and Republicans have not wasted any time in pointing out that he is, by any reasonable assessment, a radical.
What could be weirder than signing a bill into law that requires schools to stock tampons in boys' bathrooms? Or weirder than signing legislation allowing minors to receive sex change operations? Try electing the man who signed those bills Vice President of the United States. Enter Chief Weirdo Tim Walz. As governor of Minnesota, Walz supported legislation that endangers minors, hurts women, and puts radical ideology ahead of common sense. Now Kamala wants Walz to enforce those laws on a national scale. Tim Walz, too weird, too radical.
Well, unsurprisingly, after that, Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis says that Harris-Walz is now the most radical liberal ticket in the history of American politics. Expect to hear that a lot more over the next few months. And it's not without foundation, let's be honest. Tim Walz praised the BLM riots as exciting and a moment of optimism. He's also on record condemning critics of President Biden for their ageism months before he was forced off a ticket because of a universal recognition of his dementia.
I've spent a lot of time with the president, and he's great. We're talking, we're chatting and all this, and I think, we all get a little older. That's what happens, but you also gain that insight. And I think when it comes to these issues, working across the aisle to get things done, you see the president just doing this with dignity, doing it with class, getting up every day, doing the work. So I think he's just doing what he does, and I think it's a kind of incumbent upon all of us. Look, my mom's 88, still living on the farm, drives herself. Folks are able to do this, so I think this little bit of ageism that goes to this, if it's not that, would be something else. They attack all of us on something. This is part of it.
Well, like the president himself, that didn't age very well. Democrats are now facing difficult questions about whether Harris overlooked the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, because he's Jewish. She's instead picked a firebrand leftist with a history of odd statements who doesn't represent a swing state or appear to add anything to the ticket. Frankly, the Trump campaign needed this. The Harris honeymoon's been effective. There's a lot to criticize about her record and her platform. What the most eye-catching attack from Trump in the past week has been about her apparently evolving racial identity.
I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much, and she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She has always identified as a black woman. She went to a historically black college.
I respect either one.
And regardless of whether you think Trump is right or wrong about that, identity politics is not going to be the strongest suit for a 78-year-old campaigning against a mixed-race woman. We all know that. feels like 20 years ago. But until the Biden coup, this election was about global chaos, border chaos, and economic chaos. Trump now has 90 days to make sure it's not about Trump chaos instead. Here to debate all this is Daily Wire presenter and commentator Michael Knowles, the host of Emily Saves America, Emily Wilson, from the Democracy-ish podcast, Wajahat Ali, and the founder and CEO of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur. Well, welcome to all of you. First of all, Cenk, let me go to you. I saw a euphoric post on X from you earlier, absolutely ecstatic that Kamala Harris had gone for Tim Walz. Why are you so pleased about this?
Oh, I love it. And Piers, you've never been more wrong, and that's a tough thing. You know how I felt about Joe Biden, and I was right about that. And I'm going to be right about Tim Walz. He's a terrific pick for two reasons. Number one, he loves to fight, and he's a great fighter. So when he said, oh, we got a real estate baron and a venture capitalist telling us how the average guy should be, get out of here. J.D. Vance uses eyeliner. This guy's a football coach and a teacher. He barely got into politics in his 40s. He's terrific at fighting. Number two, all those progressive policies, you guys mentioned the trans issue. Go ahead, see how that turns out for you. DeSantis ruined his entire campaign running on that hateful ideology. But what you're leaving out is the awesome progressive policies that America loves that he passed. Paid family leave, abortion rights, red flag laws, closing the gun show loophole, free lunch for poor kids, free college for lower income Americans so they have a shot at this American dream. Those are all wildly popular. Please attack us on those. Come to Papa. Come to Papa. We're going to kick your ass with that stuff. So please make that mistake.
All right, let me go to Michael Knowles, who's the papa of the panel today. Michael, come to Papa. Apparently this is basically the new Messiah has just entered the race. Your thoughts?
I'm so pleased to say I agree with Cenk. I'm so happy that Kamala Harris has selected Mr. Walz. I was afraid that she might choose Mr. Shapiro, though that would have posed a political problem because Mr. Shapiro is a member of an ancient nomadic tribe that many in the Democratic Party don't seem to like very much anymore, especially with the regional war and Israel and Gaza. That could have been a big problem for the Intifada wing of the Democrat Party. So she's got to ditch him. There was a chance that she would look at Mark Kelly. I thought Mark Kelly in Arizona would have been a really good choice, really tough for Republicans to run against. Instead, she chooses the governor of Minnesota, who presided over the worst of the BLM riots, watched Minneapolis burn to the ground, and seemed to be cheering it on half the time, and a governor whose chief accomplishment is putting tampons in the boys' bathroom in public schools. So I think this is great. You know, in 1984, the only state that Ronald Reagan did not win was Minnesota. This is not exactly a swing state, okay? It's very solidly blue, and it's Kamala leaning in to one half of her identity. I think the talk about her biracial identity is overdone. There's another schizophrenia in Kamala's identity. On the one hand, she's the most left-wing senator to the left of Bernie Sanders. On the other hand, she's the establishment pick, an empty suit who goes along with whatever the Democrats want. And so the question was, which Kamala are we going to get? Josh Shapiro would have been more her leaning into the establishment side, appeal to moderates, appeal to centrists. No, she's going all the way left. We'll see how that plays in Peoria.
Yeah, I mean, Wajahat, I'd imagine,
That's
well, I won't
fantastic.
speak for you, but, well, hang on, let me bring in Wajahat here. I mean, I'd imagine you're pretty happy about the fact it's now a very progressive ticket. But when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is tweeting how ecstatic she is about this ticket, does that not give you pause for thought that actually this might be just a gift to Trump, that he can now portray this as the most progressive left-wing ticket in Democrat history, and that could help him win?
No, this is a gift to Democrats and a gift to democracy. This is America's prosecutor versus America's criminal. This is America's football coach versus America's weirdo who apparently might have a couch fetish and is absolutely hated by his own base and is a venture capitalist and is -15. J.D. Vance has the lowest favorability rating of any vice presidential candidate in the past 45 years, and he can't help it. Each and every single time you ask him to be normal, he doubles down on the weird and attacks women. I think this is a gift for the Democrats. It shows that she has the ear to the ground. To your initial comment about AOC like him, you know who else just came out and praised Tim Walz, this flaming radical that the Republicans want to paint him as? Please do. This is going to be awesome. Joe Manchin, independent, praised him. Nancy Pelosi praised him. And you have Bernie Sanders. The entire spectrum of Democrats are rallying behind the football coach, the veteran, the teacher, this Midwestern guy who's normal, who, by the way, conceived a child with his wife through IVF. And guess who is attacking IVF? Republicans. Guess who has overturned Roe v. Wade? Republicans. Guess who is mocking women who are childless? Republicans. Guess who is going after birth control? Republicans. They're talking about kids, protect the kids. Guess who gave kids free lunches? Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota. There's a photo of him surrounded by happy kids, contrasted to a photo of these really scared, terrified children. I think it was Sarah Huckabee Sanders, because Republicans are going against child tax credits, against family paid leave. This is going to be a slam dunk for Harris and Walz. I love it. I love it so much. This campaign, the Harris campaign, at least for the past 2 weeks, Piers, let's see, it's 3 months, has been on fire. It's enthusiasm, it's momentum, it's energy. And meanwhile, you got Donald ranting about Hannibal Lecter in a near-empty Georgia rally. Meanwhile, Harris has got Megan Thee Stallion and 10,000 people. It's on.
Well, you know what? It's interesting you mentioned the Georgia rally before I come to Emily, because the Democrats actually did with that exactly the kind of thing they've always accused Trump of doing, which is they just grotesquely manipulated what happened. The pictures of the crowd, apparently people leaving and half empty, were all taken before Trump had gone anywhere near the stage. So Democrats are going to start playing dirty like that. You kind of lose the moral halo, don't you? Let me bring in Emily Wilson. Welcome to Uncensored. Great to have you here. So apparently, look, the Republicans are a bunch of women-hating morons, and this is a slam dunk now for the progressive left. Thoughts?
These rhetorics are genuinely so exhausting. I'm a Republican in Los Angeles. By the way, you'd be real shocked at how many people here love Trump, especially in Beverly Hills area. But it's so funny to hear, first of all,
well, I agree. Listen, on that point, before you say anything else, I'm in Beverly Hills. I have a house in Beverly Hills. I completely agree with you. I remember in 2016 being in Beverly Hills, and you couldn't mention Trump's name without people dragging you into stocks and marching you through the streets and being pelted with rotten vegetables. Very different vibe now. That I am startled by the number of people that I have spoken to in Beverly Hills who are not even worried about being quiet about backing Trump. It's been fascinating. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to make that point because
Congratulations on your Beverly Hills vote.
Well, Cenk, I'll come to. You can respond in a moment. I'm just saying, in Beverly Hills, it used to be you couldn't mention Trump's name. Very different vibe at the moment. Back to you, Emily. My apologies.
No, don't be sorry. It's actually a huge deal. When I say that there's a shift in culture, and I was mocked on Fox News saying that a red wave was coming, this is exactly what I'm talking about. When I used to wear a MAGA hat, I would literally be refused service and assaulted in public. And now everyone is coming up to me and being like, I have never been more excited to vote for Trump. And this is crazy. These are people that used to be very far left and very liberal. But it's funny him being endorsed by all the Democrats that have single-handedly ruined this country. And it's also weird to be screaming at the top of your lungs as men saying you're fighting for democracy, when to you that just means mutilating children. I think it was a great pick. I think it's going to set her back even further. We talk about J.D. Vance being unpopular. I'm sorry, how popular was Kamala this entire time, and even now?
Right. Let me bring in Kevin O'Leary. Kevin, great to have you back on Uncensored. We've obviously, it's a great time to have you because there's been an enormous economic turmoil in the last 2 days. It's being dubbed the Kamala Crash. How damaging could this potentially be to Kamala Harris and the Democrats that you're seeing the markets so tumultuous?
I don't think the markets really have any effect on what's going to happen over the next 4 or 5 days. One of the fortunate perches I have is I work in real estate. I syndicate very large debt deals, and those people include Democrats. Many of them are advising Harris right now, one of them recently in the White House last week. And I've worked with these people for years. So I try and keep my toe in both ponds because the money isn't really political. It looks for the path of least resistance. And I'm happy to finance with a Democrat or Republican or an independent. When you're trying to raise $1 billion, you don't care where it comes from. And so we've been talking a lot about strategy here regarding Harris. And I'm a history buff. I go back far back as Bismarck, Napoleon even. I loved Kissinger, Nixon, all of that stuff, looking for modern day equivalents of what's occurring here. If I can get any edge on policy is what I care about. Now, the criticism that you started your narrative with was, how come she hasn't taken an interview yet? And I'll tell you exactly why. Fundraising is paramount right now, and she is knocking out the lights in low amounts and in high amounts. And so with her strategists last week, they decided they're not going to go in front of any press. They don't have to. They're going to get the euphoria of today. They will dominate the airwaves and social media today, right in to the convention, suck the air out of all the media then, and raise another, hopefully, $200 million. So the game doesn't start on policy until after that happens, because there's absolutely no reason to stop this momentum. And that's a smart move. Now, here's the debate I'm having trying to figure out the policy issue. And in asking these advisors, there's no way that she can win staying on the left. And they agree, and they know it. Because it doesn't matter about the 40% of the people that hate Trump or the 40% of the people that don't want her to be president. She's already got those votes. He's got those votes. That 20% in the 7 swing states, that's everything. And everybody knows you can't tell people in Pennsylvania they can't have rifles. That's a hunting culture there. You can't tell a state like that there's no more fracking. It's an energy state. You can't tell southern states you're going to have an open border policy. What are you going to do in foreign affairs? That's a big issue in Michigan. So we have to figure out from watching policy, when does she move to the middle? And does this pick for VP help her get there? Because that messaging has to start in about 4 days. Because right now, Trump and his team are painting her with such a radical brush that's damaging in the swing states, and it can't go on forever. So she's balancing. Do I keep raising money, or do I get myself into a policy debate on the air on a national network? And I think money first, always money first in politics. Suck every drop, ride the euphoria, then let's deal with this move to the center. And that's when it's going to get interesting. And one last thought. Vice presidents are completely inconsequential. They are irrelevant, as she was 17 days ago. These guys will fade into the background. I doubt there'll be VP debates. It doesn't really matter what they say or the name calling they do in the next 48 hours. Completely irrelevant. You're either voting for Trump or Vice President Harris, and you'll decide as an independent voter and decide the election based on policy. So bring it on.
Fascinating reading of it. Let me just ask you about the age issue. So if you go back 3 weeks, Donald Trump was facing an older opponent in Joe Biden, who after the debate was generally perceived to have completely lost his marbles, suffering from senile dementia, unable to even basically stand on his own 2 feet or know what day it was. That's a much easier proposition than suddenly facing a young, dynamic, or much younger, dynamic black woman. Albeit he's raised questions, obviously, about whether how she views herself in terms of her heritage. But Trump seems to be attacking this new age issue by going very youth, and I use that spelling YOOF. And there's a clip from a podcast he did yesterday with a guy called Adine Ross, where he actually starts dancing. Let's take a look.
I'll tell you about you guys.
Talk dance. Just to remind people, Trump is 78 years old when he's doing this, but it hasn't stopped him. And there he goes. I mean, some pretty nifty moves. And that's gone viral to a much younger crowd, obviously. And Kevin, when you see this, I mean, I saw him do his golf recently with Bryson DeChambeau on DeChambeau's YouTube channel. I thought that was very smart. This seems to me also pretty smart at getting to the younger crowd, because there's no doubt that Kamala Harris on things like TikTok is blowing up pretty big. I've seen that really tangibly. How big an issue is it going to be for Trump to try and be as youthful as he can against now a much younger opponent?
I think Trump's pretty masterful on social media. You saw him work it first. He was the first to go to Twitter, you recall, in the contest against Clinton. No one used that tool. His first wife advised him to do that. No president had ever done that before. It was immensely successful. And I think he'll find his way through today's platforms, whether it's Instagram or TikTok. By the way, TikTok is getting sued by Justice and SEC for Chinese spyware for 13-year-old female girls. I know that because I put a syndicate together to buy it. This thing is going to run into some big problems, but not before the election. We'll see how that plays out. I wanted to go back to a great modern day example, and I've used it a few times, about how successful you can be by saying nothing. And let's go back recent times to Justin Trudeau up in Canada, when he used a term called sunny ways. Now, you can go and Google this. It was immensely successful. When asked for press interviews about policy, he smiled and said, sunny ways, days away. And when asked about anything about the economy, he said, sunny days, days away. And he never dealt with any of it. Nobody knew he had any executional skills or what his policies were. And he's in the parliamentary system, as you know, Piers, and he won a majority mandate. That was 9 years ago. Canada has been destroyed. If you look at every metric in the G20, his lack of executional skills or any ability to implement policy has wiped out the country. In every metric, whether it's productivity, capital invested, debt per capita, anything you want to look at, we're now in the bottom quartile up in that country. The question is, in the risk scenario for Harris, is she Trudeau, or does she have executional skills? Because there's two baskets here. You got to have policy. You can get advisors for policy. But if you can't execute, it's sunny ways, one more time with feeling. And that's where the risk is to these advisors I'm talking to. And some of them are worried about that. Not as many as 2 weeks ago. 20% were dissenting back then. They wanted a process. Today, you don't find many dissenters. Everybody's falling in line for the big gala show we're going to see. I mean, this convention is going to be fantastic for fundraising. But then, is it sunny ways time, or is she going to step up and execute? Because there's no evidence she's ever executed on anything yet. And I'm not trying to be partisan or critical, because when you interview for a CEO job, you got to ask, what have you done and what have you achieved?
Yes. You know, it's fascinating you talk about the sunshine factor, because it reminded me when I was a newspaper editor back in the UK. There was another newspaper editor years before me who edited a paper called The Sunday People. And his job every Sunday was to try and find stuff that would excite the nation and sell buckets of copies of papers. And he couldn't find anything one week, and he was desperate. He was running out of time with his bosses. They were looking to make a move against him. And so he cleared the front page for a headline, "Sunny for Months, Weather Bombshell." And it was his biggest rated circulation boosting issue of the year. The problem was it wasn't then sunny for months, because like all great English summers, it then began to rain on a regular basis. And eventually, before those months were up, my friend got invited to leave his job because he couldn't deliver on the promise of sunny for months. So I think your analogy is absolutely spot on, because I witnessed it happening to my friend. If you're going to say it's going to be sunny, you better well deliver.
Yeah, I think everybody on this panel has to be impressed with what Harris has done in fundraising. I am stunned. I am so impressed. I mean, you got to hand it to her. I mean, she did it in 17 days. It's unprecedented. But those are sunny ways. And eventually the clouds come into the sky, and that's when this thing will get interesting.
Yeah, Kevin O'Leary, as always, brilliant. Thank you very much indeed.
Take care.
Let me bring back the panel. I mean, it seems to me, Cenk, there's a very good point there, isn't there? Is that she is riding this sunny wave right now, Kamala Harris, but her record is there to be attacked. She's never been successful when she's actually had to run for anything. She's got this position now by default of her boss being a decaying wreck. Are you worried about the sunny factor, as Kevin so articulately put it?
No, there's only one thing that could be a curveball here that I'm worried about. I'll get to that in a second. But first of all, you guys bragging about how Trump has got the Beverly Hills and billionaire vote locked up is hilarious. I love it. Please keep going. Okay, so you're misunderstanding politics. It isn't about left versus right, as it is populist versus establishment. And the fact that she didn't pick an establishment candidate as her VP helps her. It doesn't hurt her. So you think like, oh, right-winger or more conservative Democrat, more establishment Democrat would help her with moderates. No, it wouldn't, because those independents are not the moderates of mainstream media lore that are looking for policies that are right down the middle. No, they're looking for policies that are right down the middle of Washington. They're looking for policies that are right down the middle of Main Street, that are actually popular, like paid family leave, higher wages, better health care, all of these things that the populist wing of the Democratic Party has, and that Tim Walz is the champion of. So I love how wrong you guys are, and I think this is a totally good night, Irene, for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. And so I can't get enough of it. Now, in terms of the one curveball that could hurt, it's none of the things that you guys mentioned, and nobody cares about the tampons and all that. No, it's the giant war that Netanyahu is desperately trying to start in the Middle East.
No, but Cenk, you're wrong. You're completely wrong. Look at the furore going on over the Olympics and this completely, which we're going to come to, but this outrageous situation. We're not going to debate it now. We're going to come to that in a few minutes. But this outrageous situation of two biological males competing in the women's boxing is something that is inflamed most Americans. Now, they are. We're going to come to that in a moment. But my point is, you don't think these issues matter. I can tell you they matter. People do care about this stuff. They do care, actually, about tampons being put into male locker rooms and restrooms. They care about biological males going into women's dressing rooms and so on. This stuff matters to people. It matters to parents, I can tell you.
Look, I want you to run the campaign on tampons. I can't wait. Okay, we're going to run on paid family leave. We're going to run on protecting women's rights. We're going to protect the average American worker. She's gone populist. It's fantastic. You run a hateful campaign about how much you hate trans people, and my message to you is bye, bye, bye. Okay, you guys have no chance running that campaign.
We've already.
Please listen to Piers'
hang on, Michael. Hang on, Michael. I just want to say that when you say you guys, I have to remind you once again, Cenk, I'm not actually an identifying conservative. So
come on, Piers. After that intro?
No, you keep trying
after that intro where you frame Tim Walz as totally radical left. Come on, his policies, the core policies that he passed are all over 70% in popularity. You framed him as a radical. Are you kidding me?
Tim Walz is a progressive, radical, left-wing guy. He is. Now, Michael Knowles, let me bring you in here.
Is America radical left-wing, Piers?
Let me bring in Michael.
Is America radical left-wing? Because all of his policies poll over 70%.
Well, let's see.
Thank you for saying that America's radical left wing. I appreciate it.
Maybe you'll be right. Maybe you'll be right. I don't think you will. But I'm not saying that as someone who's a conservative. But Michael Knowles, you are a self-identifying conservative. Cenk doesn't think any of this stuff matters. None of the gender stuff matters. None of the ID stuff matters. None of the tampons in boys' dressing rooms matter. None of that matters, apparently.
Well, Cenk challenges us to run a campaign on gender ideology in public schools. We already have done that, and it's been pretty successful. That was the Glenn Youngkin campaign that turned a purple and really pretty blue Commonwealth Virginia red. Ron DeSantis ran for re-election. In large part on that issue, he soared to a re-election victory. You mentioned, Piers, there's global outrage over the unfairness of transgenderism, even in the Olympics. So it's an important issue. The fact that Governor Walz not only put the tampons in the boys' bathroom in the public schools, but also came out and embraced the radical trans policies for little kids that is tearing families apart, that's putting kids on really dark paths that lead to higher rates of anxiety, depression, suicidality, all sorts of dark stuff, sterility, earlier death, the list goes on. That is not going to play very well in the middle of the country. Now, I think Cenk makes a good point in distinguishing between the left versus right debate and the establishment versus populist debate. The problem right now, though, is that the establishment is quite leftist. Don't forget, the people pushing abortion up until the moment of birth, the people pushing for transing the kids, the people pushing to totally open up the border, the people embracing the campus intifada going on campuses around the country, that's the establishment Democrat Party going all the way up to Joe Biden. And Kamala Harris is an establishment figure. nobody's more establishment than Joe Biden. The guy's been in politics since 1972 at the national level. And Kamala Harris was brought in just to pinch hit for him because his brain has turned to applesauce. So she is playing both of these things right now, but she's playing both because the establishment is so left-wing. And she has raised a lot of money, and that's impressive. But she hasn't really done it because, as we've all observed, including Kevin, she hasn't really said anything since she became the nominee. She doesn't do press conferences. The one or two times she's spoken off the cuff, it hasn't gone very well. She's not really good on her feet. She hasn't articulated much of a policy vision until today, making an unforced error, picking this radical leftist lunatic out in Minnesota. So yes, she's made a lot of money because the Democrat establishment was keeping some money on the line when they were trying to push Joe Biden out. If she can stay in the basement of the White House until November, maybe she wins. But if she has to go out and defend these policies, it's not going to play in Pennsylvania. She came out on Jimmy Fallon's show, said she wants to end fracking forever, once and for all. That's not going to play well. She came out and said everybody needs to be woke. That is not going to play well in Michigan, in Arizona, in Nevada, in Wisconsin. So if she speaks, as I think eventually she's going to have to do, we're going to see whether Cenk or I are right. And the spoiler alert is, I am.
Piers, can I say something?
All right, I want to play. I want to play a clip from just to segue to this Olympic scandal as it's being depicted. I want to play a clip of Donald Trump talking about it.
And I will keep men out of women's sports if that's okay. If Kamala Harris gets in, the travesty that is taking place at the Paris Olympics will come to America when we host the Los Angeles Olympics. And by the way, which I was president, we happened to get it. I was the president. I also got you a thing called the World Cup, which is coming very soon.
Well, the two fighters at the centre of the Olympic gender furore are now guaranteed to be on the podium for the women's boxing in Paris. Some, however, feel they shouldn't even be competing, given the intense speculation around whether they're actually biologically, genetically male. Joining me now is the former NCAA swimmer and host of Outkick's Gains for Girls podcast, Riley Gaines. So, Riley, the issue here is not that they're trans women competing against women. The issue here is that they have XY chromosomes, is what has been claimed and made clear by other governing bodies in women's boxing who have banned them from competing in the last World Championships. So a slightly different case to the issue of trans athletes competing in women's sport, but nonetheless just as pertinent.
You hit the nail on the head, Piers. And to very briefly address the comment made previously that this campaign is a campaign surrounding being anti-trans, being against trans people, let's be very, very clear before I even say anything. What we are talking about as it pertains to the Olympics, or as Michael Knowles said, I mean, the gender ideology movement as a whole, it is not anti-anything. It is pro-parental rights, it is pro the safeguarding of children, and it is pro-women's rights. You can check any Gallup poll. That is something that majority of Americans, really globally, majority of people across the world agree upon. But yes, Piers, as it pertains to these boxers in the Olympics, they failed the chromosomal testing that every athlete, I believe, has to take. The requirement is that women have to have XX chromosomes. These athletes failed. Here's what we know. I listened to the press conference yesterday put on in Paris by the IBA, and this is what we know. Both boxers were initially subjected to a chromosomal test by an independent laboratory in Istanbul after the IBA received complaints from coaches and competitors during the 2022 Women's World Boxing Championships. Both athletes were then retested in India again during the next year during the same Women's World Boxing Championships in 2023 to clarify and confirm prior results. This is when both athletes were then found to have XY chromosomes. Both boxers were informed of the results of the test in writing. Both boxers were given the opportunity to appeal the findings to the Court of Arbitration for Sports. The IBA even offered to pay for the majority of any cost that would allow both boxers to appeal. One male athlete, he did not appeal the decision. Imane Khelif, I would say the athlete that has received the most prominence from Algeria here, he appealed the decision but then ultimately withdrew the appeal. That's what this is. This isn't an argument that is meant to be hateful. I mean, it's not even opinionated. These athletes are males, and males do not belong in women's sports. Really that simple.
Wajahat, I just don't
All this is a
understand
lie.
why anyone, given what we've just heard, why anyone would think this is right or fair or equal or does anything to promote anything to do with women's sports or rights to fairness and equality. But by all means, try and defend it.
You start off
I
with
was
the
just gonna
clip
say,
of
I've heard
Trump
some of
saying
the
he's going to
most-
promise to keep men out of women's bodies. And you know what? Go ahead and run with that, because Republicans want to have zero regulation, but they want to regulate women's bodies. They're attacking women. They're attacking biracial people. They're attacking Kamala Harris over her race. Now they're attacking LGBTQ people, and they're attacking Imane Khelif. I am here for Imane Khelif and winning. She medaled. She was born a woman. She identifies as a woman. It's female on her passport. She's boxed women. You are quoting the IBA that is run by Russia, the same IBA that is discredited by the Olympics Commission. The Olympics Commission doesn't even look at their testing and the results, completely discredited it. And the more that you attack these female boxers, the more you misgender them by calling them he. Look what's happening around the world. People are disgusted by it. They're like, this is hateful. This is cruel.
No,
this
they're
is
not.
mean. You're attacking
No, they're
this
not. You're
poor
wrong.
Algerian boxer, making a fake story,
do you
quoting the Russia's
hang on,
IBA,
Riley,
which is
hang on.
discredited. So go for
Yeah,
it.
Wajahat,
Go for it.
Wajahat, let me just explain. I have not misgendered either of these boxers. I've called them she. That's fine. No problem with that. They were born with female
You guessed it.
reproductive organs. Well, I'm told they were born with female reproductive organs, but they have XY chromosomes. They didn't appeal
They
against
don't,
their ban.
Piers.
Had
They don't.
Hang
The
on,
whole
Cenk.
thing's a lie.
Hang on, Cenk. I'll come to you. But Wajahat, they didn't appeal when they had the chance to appeal. And the simple way they can clear this up before they box again, they can actually just say, here we are, I'm prepared to take a test. Let's do a simple swab sex test. And if it turns out they have an XY chromosome, would you then accept that that makes them biologically male? And would you accept that should make them ineligible to take part in a boxing competition against a biological female? Yes or no?
If you and Michael will take a test proving that you're male and submit the results,
Yes, I
then
will.
I'll be fine
I'll do it
doing
now.
the same.
I'll do it
Okay,
now.
really?
Sure.
So wonderful.
Of course.
Grass, you'll do it right now? Let's do it. Do
No
it
problem.
right now, and then Imane Khelif will show you all the records where she was born a female, identifies as female, has female on her passport, went through all the testing. The Olympics
No,
Commission
all they've
said she's
seen is
fine.
her passport.
Boxed females, lost to females,
All they've
beat
seen
females,
is her passport.
and she's from Algeria.
She failed the sex test. They've just seen her passport.
If she failed
No,
the
she
test,
didn't.
If she failed the test, she would not be boxing right now. The IBA is run by Russia, which is discredited. This is why the Olympic Commission says that we do not take the result. They laugh
So
at them.
why won't they do
That's
a
why
test?
Since last year, they discredit them.
Why won't they do a test?
Because they don't have
Just do
to.
a test.
Because they realize
They
it's
don't have to,
nonsense
right.
fiction. You are going out of your way to put a target on this innocent woman who came from poverty and has literally worked so hard to medal. And you have created a fictional target and a bogey woman, and I hope she sues people, and I hope she medals, and I hope she wins
does
in life. I love it.
I hope she sues people, because you know what?
So
if she
you
sues
also
people,
support domestic
then we'll find
violence.
out the truth. Let me go to Emily. Emily, it seems to me that this is a classic case, isn't it? Where people on the left love to talk about promoting women's rights. Right to the moment somebody produces a passport and says, I'm a woman, but has turned out to have been banned from the World Championships because they tested XY positive chromosome, which means they're male. They didn't appeal against the ban, and they refuse to take a test now, but they want to say, hey, look at my passport, I'm a woman.
Yeah, this is, this
None of this is
subject, the fact that we have to talk this deeply about it is actually insane, because any human being on the planet that has any sort of common sense, and of course, this is why only Democrats disagree with this, go, if it's a man, they cannot compete with women. This is not about anything that has to do with trans people. But of course, naturally, what you do, you start attacking, you're attacking Kamala about race. She's the one that's saying she's Indian and black. We don't care. I don't think race should be talked about, but you
she
guys
is
make it
Indian
your
and
entire
black.
platform. So who cares? It doesn't matter. What are her policies? You guys don't talk about that. And when then
You're
Trump
the one
brings it up,
attacking
you
her
get
for
upset.
it.
It should be about protecting women. We don't care. I don't care. I mean, I live in LA. These are the least of my worries. I'm
Yeah,
too busy
right.
trying to make sure I don't get robbed walking down the street. Yeah, and it's like protect women, keep men out of women's sports. There is no one on the planet who should be able to disagree with it, but of course, Democrats do, because I don't know. You guys are nuts. I don't know what to tell you. This is a very black and white situation. This is literally just about protecting the woman. Then again, I know you guys don't really know what a woman is, so of course you might have confusion, and especially when you're all about, like, women's rights. Okay, well, you guys weren't about women's rights when it came to forcing them to get a vaccine, but that's a whole nother story.
All right, let me bring in Cenk, who's been foaming at the mouth here. I mean, Cenk, I've got a 12-year-old daughter, and if she was competing in any kind of elite level sport and was potentially going to enter the... Well, you may throw your hands up in fury, but actually, I don't want her getting into a situation where her dreams and aspirations in women's sport are curtailed because people like you think it's fine for biological males to compete against biological women. It's not fine. It's grotesquely unfair. Now, you might say, as Wajahat's done, well, we can't believe a word of the tests that were done because Russia was behind. Okay, so do another test right now at the Olympics and show us the results. And if it turns out they are both XY chromosome, would you then change your mind? Yes or no?
So you guys have no idea what my positions are. I've been fighting the left on this issue for a while. And a lot of people got really mad at us. I believe the Olympics should do the testing. I believe that it doesn't help trans women to compete in women's events, especially in contact sports. Now, having said that, this whole thing is based on a lie. The IBA never showed that test. It's a Russian loon who runs it. It was a Russian sponsor, their only sponsor, and they were worried that she was going to be, hold on, let me actually finish, because you've been lying about it the whole time, Piers. Can I just finally tell the truth to your viewers? They never presented that case. There's no test. They totally made it up because they were worried that she was going to be a Russian boxer. Do you know how many times she's lost? She's lost.
So, Cenk,
she's lost
why
9
didn't she appeal?
times. She's not some sort of demigod. She doesn't have XY chromosomes.
Why didn't she appeal?
You're just totally making it up.
Because no, you're making it up.
Did you watch the press conference yesterday?
No, first of all, Piers, let's go one step at a time. One step at a time. Do you admit that test has never been shown publicly, and you're all taking the word of an absolute Russian lunatic who also said that the IOC was run by a pedophile in chief? Just totally bonkers guy. You've never seen the test.
Let me ask you.
You're pretending it's real when it's never been real.
All right, let me ask you, before I go to Riley, let me just ask you, Cenk. Hang on, Riley, hang on. Hang on, Riley, I'll come to you, Riley. Hang on one sec. Cenk, I'm just going to ask you one more time. If they do another test, as I believe they absolutely should, to preserve the integrity of the Olympics, which promotes fairness and inclusion and equality, but is not doing that to women, if they do another test and it turns out they are both XY chromosome, would you accept that that means they should not be competing in women's sport? Yes or no?
So for the Olympics, she would still qualify, but I would disagree with the Olympics. I don't think she should compete in women's sports if she has XY chromosome. No, but Piers, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Like, our positions are not at all unreasonable. But you guys, you don't even know that she has XY chromosomes. It's totally made up. But you are so obsessed with this trans issue. You mentioned you have a 12-year-old girl. I have a 12-year-old girl. I don't mind if she competes against trans girls in junior high and high school. What are you going to do? Check the genitals of all those kids? What are you guys, nuts? Now, at the professional level, that's a different story.
I do mind. I can't believe that. So you would be quite happy
go check the genitals of all the kids, you lose.
You'd be quite happy for your daughter to get beaten by biological males. Completely insane. There's a whole reason, by the way, we separate the sexes at the Olympics. You know what it is? If we didn't, women wouldn't win anything. Let me go to Riley. Riley, as the only elite athlete, I believe, amongst us today, correct me if I'm wrong, panel, but Riley, you watched that whole press conference. I didn't get the feeling it was just the word of one raging Russian loon, because I heard a lot of non-Russian accents getting involved as well. It doesn't change the fact, as he said, they were found to have XY chromosomes in a test. They had a chance to appeal that to avoid being banned, and they chose not to appeal it. That is so damning. And even if it isn't, even if it was all terribly unfair, as Cenk and Wajahat would like us to believe, do another damn test then. Show the world you're actually biological women. And there's a reason they're not doing it. Riley.
Absolutely. We see a lot of information being pushed out there that these are just cisgender women with elevated levels of testosterone. The IBA made it very clear they did not do testosterone level testing. They never did that, not even one time. We don't know what these athletes' testosterone levels are. What they did do was test the karyotypes of these athletes. The only requirement was that these athletes had XX chromosomes, and they failed the test. No, they haven't come out and explicitly said these athletes have XY chromosomes, but that's because the Algerian and Taiwanese Olympic Committee have refused the IBA to release these results. I mean, the requirement was have XX chromosomes, and they failed that. Therefore, let's use intuitive thinking here. Let's use our brains. We all have them. That means they have a Y chromosome. And if you have a Y chromosome, you are a male. I mean, do we need to send like half of the population back to sixth grade biology?
You just admitted that there is no such test.
They just said chromosomal
there is no such test.
And they
It's
failed.
never been
The
shown.
requirement was two XX chromosomes, and they failed. And they failed. Because of the Taiwanese and the Algerian Olympic Committee, they're not allowed to explicitly say these athletes have XY.
You know what?
Go watch the 30-minute.
You're
It's
not
a
going to believe.
30-minute, very
Cenk,
brief
you're going to
press
keep saying
conference.
everyone's
Go watch it. It
lying,
happened
but
yesterday.
the answer is just do another test and
Because
show
you
us.
are.
And there's a reason they're not doing it. Let me bring in
let me
Michael.
add,
Michael, I think
most
Okay, look, you
athletes-
can make up anything. You can make up anything and then demand a test.
They were literally
but it doesn't mean
banned
that
from the
thing you
World
made up is
Championships.
true. So let's
They were banned from the World
But by the
Championships.
IBA, a bunch of lunatics who've now been decertified.
So why didn't they
Because
appeal?
not just because of this, because they make up things one after another. This guy's totally So guys, look, we have to have the bare minimum of agreeing on facts and evidence. And Riley just admitted there, and you've admitted, Piers, that there is no such test. That it's never been produced publicly. You're taking the word of a guy who seems to be a total raving lunatic, no matter where he comes from. Okay.
So why didn't they appeal the ban?
So then your big thing is, I've accused you of a. Hold on. So your big thing is, we accused of her of a thing that doesn't exist, and now she has to prove that it isn't true. Well, that's an absurd standard. I could accuse you of 1,000 things and demand that you prove that it's not true.
This is where you're being so disingenuous.
When did you stop beating your wife,
I'm going to
Piers?
bring Michael in, but hang on a second, Cenk. You're being so disingenuous. Because the truth is, they were both banned from the last World Championships because they failed a sex test, which is rightly said. Fine, but they had a chance to appeal, but they didn't. They took the ban. They accepted the findings of the ban, or they would have appealed it. That's the bottom line, which means they're male. They've got a Y chromosome. Yes, Riley.
80% of the female athletes at the Olympics.
The particulars here.
Hang on, let Riley go first, then Michael.
80% of the female athletes at the Olympics are in favor of a simple cheek swab to test sex. Over 80% of the athletes, female athletes.
It takes 2 seconds. It takes 2 seconds. You do literally a cheek swab. That's it. And then you establish, are they male or female? Michael, I think you've got a more overarching solution to this.
I do, actually. But before we even get to that, which I think was simple enough and it worked a quarter century ago, I have this question for Cenk, because it seems like we're getting so bogged down in the particulars. What exactly are this fighter's chromosomes, and what leagues are credible in ascertaining this question? But you just said, Cenk, that you would have no problem with your daughter engaging in a sport, even we're discussing a combat sport, with someone who has male biology. And what people find so disturbing about the Imane Khelif story, I think, is the notion that a man is punching a woman in the face. So if you say you have no problem with this, with men, people with the biology of a man, even fighting women, even playing sports with women, do you think there is any circumstance in which it's okay for a man to punch a woman in the face?
Yeah, so I'm glad you're asking the question, because I said it, and let me double down and clarify so that no one's confused about it. So my cutoff is high school. The reason why I fought with the left is beyond high school, especially in contact sports, you are risking not only the women in that ring, but you're also risking trans rights. Because the minute that a trans woman knocks out a biological female in a way that is significant, right, and does real damage, trans rights are going to be set back 50
Hold on, though. I want to be clear, Cenk.
And I don't want that. I want to protect the trans community. Hold on. Can I just answer the question?
You're saying,
hold on.
I just want a little clarification.
Guys, in high school.
You're saying an 18-year-old man should be able to punch an 18-year-old woman in the face. 18 is fine. 19, that's when it
what
gets
boxing
bad.
Is there in high school? What are you talking about? In high school, there are no contact sports like boxing and MMA. If you're talking about wrestling, that's about as much of a contact sport as there is. So in high school, look, guys, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. First of all, this affects 7 people. You're being ridiculous. And the reason you're talking about that is because you don't want to talk about higher wages and health insurance for everyone. But if you want to talk about high school, what you have to do in order to let me just goddamn it answer the question. Can I just answer the goddamn question? So in high school, you're trying to find 7 people that you think is a problem. Oh, okay, apparently I can't answer the goddamn question. Okay, listen. What you're doing is you're saying in order to find the 7 trans girls out there that are so dominating these sports, which is not even true. Leidecker is dominating swimming way more than any trans woman is on any sport.
They're literally
I'm not going to test her testosterone. I'm not going to test all that stuff. But in terms of the high school athletes, I'm not going to go and ask all the state officials and government creeps to go check the genitalia of our daughters so that they could ascertain whether they're trans or not. This is a trans witch hunt, and I'm not going to stand for it.
Okay, great. Good for you, Cenk. You're not going to worry about whether blokes are beating up women. Great. Michael, what's your bigger solution?
Did I just say that? I said on the professional
I hate
level.
to sound like a far-right
I
conservative
know
here.
your trans hate has taken over your body so much.
I'll wait for Cenk to finish.
I have never hated trans people. I think trans people are entitled. I think trans people are entitled to the absolute same human rights as everybody else. And I've always promoted their rights to fairness and equality. Right to the point, it actually erodes women's rights to fairness and equality. Michael, final word to you.
Thank you. I know this is going to sound like a far-right, crazy, conservative answer, but, we're all defending the great tradition of women's boxing. That did not exist in the Olympics until 2012. Women's boxing didn't exist pretty much anywhere until 1998, 1999. I'm all for women's sports. They're great sports and wonderful women athletes. To me, I think it's kind of distasteful to watch women get their heads cracked in. And so call me old-fashioned in that way. But I think maybe certain things are better left to the fellas, and catching blows to the head maybe would be one of them. And then we could circumvent this whole debate.
On that bombshell, thank you all very much indeed for joining me. I appreciate it. But let's just not forget that there are going to be 2 people who are alleged to be biological males winning Olympic medals in women's boxing. And those are medals which I believe should be going to biological women, or just women, as we used to call them. Anyway, thank you all very much. I appreciate it.